Yeah, you're too far away from me. I'm not up on what's going on down there.
No,
We are live.
we are live, okay. Okay, well, good evening, staff, and good evening, authority members, and good evening, all the people, the hundreds of people who are watching this really interesting meeting tonight. Thousands of people. I'm going to call the Board of the North Virginia Transportation Authority business meeting for December 8th, 2022. Would you please call, do a roll call, Mr. Ford, if you don't mind?
Vice Chair Snyder,
Here.
Chairman McKay,
Here.
Chair Wheeler,
Here.
Board Chair Crystal,
Here.
Mayor Wilson, Mayor Davis Younger,
Present.
Mayor Rischel,
Here.
Mayor Meyer, Senator Voisko,
She's supposed to be attending.
she is here.
She's there remote.
Here.
Okay,
She is.
okay.
Supervisor Harity,
Here.
Mr. Goodell,
Here.
Ms. Hines,
Here.
and Mr. Cole.
Here.
Chair Randall, excuse me, Mayor Wood,
Here.
Mr. Lynch,
Here.
and Mr. Horsley.
Here.
Sorry about that. And Mayor Meyer is here.
Mayor's here, very good.
Chair Randall, we do have a quorum.
Thank you. First order of business is to approve the minutes from November 10th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Moved by Ms. Crystal, is there a second?
Second.
Second, is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 So weak. Any opposed? That motion will pass unanimously. One abstention. I'd like to take a point of personal privilege and recognize that Monica Backman, since we last met, two things have happened. One, she has been named one of the Washington Business Journal's Power 100. And if that's, yeah, that's not enough. She has been named Woman of the Year from the Women's Transportation Seminar. So she's had a very
Thank you. Thank you.
She kept coming up on my Facebook. And I was like, go, Monica, go. Wonderful. Wonderful. Fantastic. So we have not that many action items tonight, but the two that we have are pretty important. And the first one is, of course, the adoption of transaction. Mr. Wilson, do you have anything before we hand it off to Ms. Becky?
Well, I can say a few words,
Okay.
Madam Chair. Well, Mayor Wilson cleared his throat. In your packet regarding the memo for this item, on page 2, we have the timeline for how we got here tonight. We actually started transaction with the pre-solicitation conference in December of 2019. Now, I won't go through every item that we have that is part of transaction, but tonight is the culmination of a lot of hard work. You update a transaction every 5 years, but it's really an every 2.5 process for staff and your committees, your technical advisory committee, your planning coordination advisory committee, and of course, the planning and programming committee, which Mayor Wilson chairs. I just want to thank all of you, because this was a year where we, in addition to updating transaction, we also had a funding program update. We had a 6-year program that we updated that you adopted in July. So for Keith and my team and Mike and everyone, thank you. I hope people take some time off, you as well, once we finish this meeting tonight. And Madam Chair, having said that, I will turn it over to Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Ms. Backman, Chair. I would echo Ms. Backman's comments. This is a culmination of a significant amount of work on the part of our MBTA staff, as well as our member jurisdictions who have all worked to submit projects. The plan you have before you has 424 multimodal projects, about 44 billion of which are coming from transit, 28 billion coming from roadway intersection and interchange and parking projects, 1.5 billion for non-motorized, and little less than $1 billion from technology and TDM. This is obviously a fiscally and geographically unconstrained plan, but one that makes these projects candidates for future funding for the remainder of the term here. These are a set of projects that have been unanimously endorsed by the PAC, the PCAC, PPC, and any other committee you want to come up with that has 3 or 4 letters. They've endorsed the plan and the project list together. The PPC received a lot of public input that we summarize in here, as well as looking at a couple of different scenarios for the growth of the region in the next several years. So without further talking, I would recommend that the committee takes action.
The motion made, and I will second that motion, and let's have discussion on the motion. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Discussion on the motion.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Mills.
Just begin with a thank you to staff. I know we had some conversation, or I had been obnoxious about the point of the assumptions around the emissions and EV rate. I was not only looking at the final version, but also going back, and I think the decision to reflect that more authentically, I really appreciate. I think it's important for us to understand, the likely consequences with regard to emissions of these plans, and I think that both the description is clearer and certainly the representation on the measures feels to me considerably more authentic, and I really appreciate that.
Anybody else? Well, I would add my thanks to staff who worked very hard on this update. I would also note that we, and Mayor Wilson actually said it once, but we had significant public input, both in the room, sent in. After we had the public input in the room, I held, 3 or 4 virtual meetings with some of the members of the groups who had come in and expressed concern, heard their concerns, asked for any thoughts on what we should do different going forward, or how we do this going forward. Had lots of discussions around what we thought trips in the area would look like post-COVID, what transit versus transportation look like, just all types of things. And so I do appreciate all the different organizations that I talked with and their input. I thought it was important, one, to make sure that I knew what they were saying, what their concerns were, and also to get any ideas that we have. Of course, this is unconstrained in every way. And so this is kind of in some ways just the beginning of the process, not the end of the process. And so as we go through this process, I will, continue to talk to those groups. And when it is appropriate, present some of their thoughts, especially as it related to environmental concerns and things like that. And so thank you so much for all the work everyone's done to get us to this point right now. And we're do this again in 5 years. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That motion will pass unanimously. Thank you. All right, item number 5 is the legislative priorities. Ms. Maynard will come to the table. As she does that, I will note, as I did in the GPC meeting, that last night, Chair Wheeler, Chair McKay, and I had the opportunity to speak to DATA, the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance. And there was a lot of discussion around protecting MBTA money and having MBTA money with the almost 40 million return of the state coffers. And it was, I really appreciated the discussion. And secondly, today I went to the Board of Trade's annual business meeting. I had people come up to me, and some people that watched the data meeting last night, and others who had just known this issue, and expressed support for the authority's position. And so, it feels like that since 2018, authority members have been talking about this, but it hadn't really kind of seeped out to Board of Trade or chambers and other organizations. And so I appreciate MVTC taking up this item in their legislative program, but I also appreciate that this is no longer something that just MBTA members are talking about. Everyone really understands, one, how important NVTA is, two, how we have amassed the money that we have, three, that we do not want to retax our people for a third time, four, that we want to protect the money that we have right now, and five, that we want to get the money back in from state coffers. And so the message is out. It's of course part of a legislative program again this time, but the message is out, and I appreciate that I think every locality here has put this in a legislative program since 2018 when this happened, and continues to do that. And I think that just the continued kind of pounding and talking has really, what 4 years later, really has really penetrated and got through. So I just want to make that point before I turn over to Ms. Backman and Ms. Boehner.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, before you is the latest draft of our priorities for the 2023 session, and they are very similar, if not exactly the same as 2022, which is protect our own, protect our authority, protect our funding sources, protect state funding sources. Just a reminder that the 1.5% reduction in the sales and use tax on grocery and personal hygiene products starts January 1, 2023. That 0.5% was going to the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. So again, we'll just have to start looking very closely to see what the long-term structural impact of that might be. We also have the statement regarding effective use of transportation technology. Again, as always, embedding the TTSP into everything that we do. And hopefully we will see some legislation continuing to advance the use of zero low emission vehicles, particularly with the use of the federal funds, as well as taking advantage of options to expand local authority to use automated traffic enforcement. So these are going to be our priorities. We're taking down to General Assembly. We will send these out to our delegation. Hopefully there'll be another opportunity for the chair to come down to Richmond and talk with the delegation and remind them of what we do. Probably talk a little bit about the recently adopted transaction, and keep them focused on that protection of our money, and look for an opportunity that might come forward. So that's all I have on the priorities.
Yes, sir.
Tracy, are you expecting any pushback on point 4? On the use of technology?
No, actually, that is the state hasn't. I was going to say a NEVI plan, but I'm going to say a National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan, which is focused on the formula-driven money. So it's pretty baked in where it's going to go. That plan is a living document. It'll be continuing to be updated. The administration has indicated that they really want the next plan to take a look at things like our primary roads or secondary roads at residential. Clearly, that is all something that this group and individual jurisdictions are very interested in.
Yep.
So put us at the table to hopefully be able to talk about that.
Okay, thanks.
Referencing the data meeting, we were talking about the NVTA lost revenue. We were talking about the grocery tax lost revenue. But we also brought up, and if you could remind us, and it's relevant to what you're hearing now, what the lost transportation revenue would have been with the gas tax suspension, and are we hearing anything else about that?
No.
Those three things combined, mega dollars for transportation in Northern Virginia.
So we are not hearing anything else from the administration regarding a gas tax holiday, nor have I seen any pre-filed bills. I think with the national and our local gas tax prices have come down. They are still running ahead of projection on revenue coming in, pretty much driven by, no surprise, sales and use tax is doing really well. And part of that does still go to the state coffers. So they're, for now, the governor, while still, I think is still interested in some tax relief, is not looking in that direction. I would be really surprised if something.
I'm sorry, I just, I'm still talking.
No, I'm sorry, I'm done.
You finished?
Yeah.
Ms. Boysko. Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that I don't anticipate any gas tax changes at all. I just wanted to confirm from our side in the Senate. I would not believe there would be one.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else have any other comments? right, let me see if I can get this motion right this time. I move the adoption of the 2023 MBTA legislative priorities.
Second.
Seconded by
This is a subject of conversation.
A lot of energy. Very enthusiastic.
You have no idea how hard that was for UPC meeting.
Additional layer of verbs. Pending the
I
approval.
just have no idea now, yeah, listen. All right. So that's motion been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passed unanimously. Those were our two action items tonight. Everything else is a discussion or information item, and the first one is the proposed calendar for next year. Ms. Backman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So number 6 in your packet is the proposed meeting calendar for schedule for calendar year 2023. I would have it on your agenda as an action item, but the bylaw states that you will adopt your meeting calendar at your annual organizational meeting, which is in January. So adhering to what we've done for many years past, your meeting schedule will be the second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. With the noted exception of August, we do not anticipate an August meeting unless special circumstances require, which we hope that is not the case. Additionally, I will draw your attention to the December meeting. In December, we will meet at 6 p.m. because NVRC, they are meeting on the same evening due to the Christmas holiday. So they are meeting, they usually meet the fourth Thursday of the month, but they have to push their meeting up 2 weeks. So we are going to meet at 6 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. in December.
I'm assuming the 8th, 20th, and 10th is when it came to be versus when it came to be funded.
Yeah, well, so for the June meeting, June 8th, technically, you hit your 20th anniversary since the authority was created in this calendar year, but we had a lot going on. Next year is the 10-year anniversary since HB 2313 was adopted. So we wanted to combine something or have a combined celebration, if you will.
And then November 9th is 2 days after the election, so we have no idea how that.
Yeah,
We're gonna be going on that day.
Subject to cancellation, but right now we want to make sure that we have these dates on your calendar.
Yeah. So him that meeting, and Mr. Bedell, he was gonna run that meeting. All right, sounds good. Any questions about the calendar for next year? All right, the travel trends updates.
Jonathan, will you pull up item number 7? Go to the next page, please. Good evening, Madam Chair, members. On the travel trends, we are at the end of the 3rd year of pandemic, and the highway traffic volumes are still below pre-pandemic. On the screen, you can see a chart, but the midweek travel surges we have observed. So they are much closer to the pre-pandemic level, but we are still about 4% below pre-pandemic level on the highway traffic volumes.
4%.
4%. So that's on highway traffic volumes. Jonathan, if you could go to the next page. On the transit side, there have been some substantive growth in local bus services, especially the Alexandria Dash, City of Fairfax Q, and Fairfax County's Fairfax Connector. They have all reported ridership that is above the pre-pandemic level. Especially to note is Fairfax Q, City of Fairfax Q, they have reported 30% ridership that is above pre-pandemic level. And we are in discussion with them about this trend, and the reasons that we are getting from them is pre-care service that started in June or July, return of the GMU students, and comeback of the university-sponsored shuttle services. So these are the reasons that we got from them for this trend, and we hope that it continues. If you can look at the chart, look at the bottom 2 lines, which are the VRE and Metro Rail trends. Opposing trend in the 3rd quarter, July to September, Metro Rail was going down in our region, in Northern Virginia, while VRE was going up. And we observed that the metro station shut down south of Ronald Reagan Airport. At the same time, VRE is a low fare service to compensate for those stations and free fare in the month of September. We are thinking those are the contributing factors.
Sure, for VRE.
In September. So these are the salient features of this update. This is third quarter of this year. And we will continue monitoring the transit ridership trend, especially with the Silver Line extension beginning of the service. We have already seen reports of encouraging demand for the Dallas International Airport station, plus 2,000 entries daily for the station. So we will continue to monitor these trends and we will report back.
All right, these are interesting numbers. Questions? Mr. McKay?
Just for clarification, the Metro bus and Metro rail statistics on here are for their whole systems or just their routes in Virginia?
Just in
Virginia.
Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah, since we started this analysis, our feature was since PPP is also doing similar analysis, we wanted to show Virginia specific.
Virginia. Yep. I just wanted to make sure that's clear because it might not be clear for people looking at it. Thank you.
The traffic volume chart, is that, this is just for the AM peaks?
The chart is for AMP, but we've been observing all period of the day.
So I did see I think it was an MBTA report not long ago that one did show traffic coming back, but it also showed that the trips had changed from pre-COVID. We have more trips in the middle of the day and not just kind of focused on AM and PM peak hours. So, but this is just AM. So if you have any of that information about the trips throughout the day, I would love to see that as well.
Sure. We will report in the next.
Okay, wonderful.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
looking at the transit rider display here, one of the things that I think would be a good ad for us is to start to keep track of who's doing free fare and for how long. VRE did it for a short period of time. I know that Fairfax has gotten a grant from the state to do a reduced fare for low-income people. I just think we might want to take a look at how that tool, either reducing fares for poor people or free fares for all, affects ridership.
Okay. All right. You get that. All right.
Madam Chair, I think that's a great suggestion. I just do want to make clear our program has not been implemented yet. So this number and this, thankfully above the first system above the 0% line is a remarkable achievement for Connector, but actually is not benefiting from the reduced fare that's been publicized because we've not put that in place yet. And I do think for some of our bus systems, not only free fare, and I don't know if there's a way to separate this, something I'm going to ask our county for, is that we of course have free fare for all of our students. And so when school starts back up again, at certain points, we do see some student ridership numbers, not as profound as George Mason's because of the scale of their system and how big George Mason is. But I do think one of the things we should also be looking at as a region is what our positions are on free fare for public school, or in our case, we're extending this to private schools to middle and high school students. Because I do think, if you want to take a baby step into free fare, that's a great way to do it. And to also build a dedicated user base of transit for the long term. I mean, these kids it's amazing how many of them are taking advantage of our Connector bus routes. Every single high school I drive past at the end of the school day, loads of kids waiting there to hop on the Connector bus. So it's a great thing.
On school bus.
It's cooler in a lot of ways to go where you want to go. Well, what's cool about it is it's faster. You get to go where you want to go. Some of these kids are going to work. Some of these kids are going to work. Some of these kids are going somewhere else that's not, just to their neighborhood location. Many of them are riding these buses back to school later in the day for after school activities. And so it opens up a world of opportunity for these kids. And I just think it's something we really should be looking at as a region, because it's a big benefit to them. And frankly, from an equity standpoint, it gets kids to be able to participate in things at school. that they wouldn't be able to otherwise. And for some of these kids, they literally have to get to work after school, and school buses are not taking them where their jobs are.
Madam Chair, let me echo what Jeff just said. I really do think this is an area that we need to delve into, and maybe NVTC is doing deeper work. I don't know, because I don't go to those meetings anymore. But when we increase the ridership on our public buses, there is a federal payment that goes up because ridership is up. And so I think there's a delta here of how much money we're actually putting in versus what we could be gaining by opening it up through federal subsidy that is worth spending a little time trying to figure out, because most systems are recovering 20% or less of the cost of running the bus service. And so it's just not that much money.
Yes, Mr. Meyer.
Our experience is we're a very small city, but it's anecdotal, but I think it's illustrative of something significant. I hope it's illustrative of that. The height of the pandemic, well, when the pandemic started, we immediately went fare free. We did it because we didn't want to expose our drivers to health risks, and we put plexiglass around the driver, and we opened the bus up for free. Ridership dropped dramatically, but we had a baseline of users. About 18% of our ridership, or 15 to 18%, were transit dependent. They needed that bus to get from where they lived to where they worked to get home. They had no other transportation alternative, and they could not work from home. They had the kind of employment that required them to go from point A to point B and back. So for them to get a $2 or so waiver in the morning and in the afternoon, $4 a day times 5 days times 4 weeks, $80 a month net cash. For some individuals, that is significant. Secondly, categorically, prior to the pandemic, we were giving free rides to seniors, to students, to George Mason students, as well as city students. And so we had a small subset of people who we were requiring fares from. They were probably the individuals who could least afford it. And we were also faced with the prospect of having to invest in new technologies to collect fares. And taking the bus drivers out of the fare collection business freed them up from a lot of administrative and even risks of being accosted or robbed. When we looked at all of this, as was just said, only 8% of the revenues that we were receiving only accounted for 8% of the cost of our bus system. So it was a no-brainer for us to go and find that delta of 8% and put it in there and go fare free. We are technically fare free for 3 or 4 years, 3 years plus a 4th year option, but we essentially will be fare free forever.
Are you fare free just for your students?
No, anyone who gets on the bus now is free.
It's fare free for everyone.
For everyone.
And when you say you went and found that 8%, where'd you find it? No, seriously, I mean, 8% is nothing.
Because we had some significant investment in our little city, about $1 billion of private capital investment over the last 3 or 4 years. Those projects were finished and they were coming online. We were getting several $1 million in new revenues that were not anticipated. Well, they weren't projected in our revenue projections, so they weren't included in these projections. So we allocated that money. It was not an insignificant amount of money. It was a couple pennies on the tax roll.
And you're still able to give your workers, pay them a fair wage and give them
They
their
actually gave them
compensation
a
increases?
significant increase.
Really? Okay.
And so, we're small, but for me, the primary motivation was the equity issue more than anything else. Because they could, those individuals and where they were living and how they were living, that was probably going to make more of a difference than any other category.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to belabor this conversation, but I do want to note a couple of things. I think Chair McKay is exactly right that I think the opportunity for students is a really important one. Like most things, Chair McKay supports. Alexander did this 6 years ago. But
We did it way more than 6 years
You
ago.
just said he's exactly right. I was like, that's exactly right.
We did ours way more than 6 years ago.
Let me just say, let me say a couple things.
We're supposed to be regional.
At a time right now where, and I think this is the next step of the conversation, and at a time right now where I know all of our school transportation systems are struggling on the staffing side, struggling to keep buses running. This presents an opportunity to have the next step of the conversation, which is actually looking at whether you replace, certainly with mostly high and middle school, not necessarily elementary, but whether you actually replace school transportation and leverage your opportunity on fixed route. I mean, I can tell you that we have several dash routes that operate tantamount as school transportation during certain hours. If you get on those routes, they are full of students going to school, and they're full of students going in the afternoon. And so it's an incredible opportunity, and one that I think allows us to take advantage of some of the challenges. The other thing that I would say, and I keep telling this every time I get called about this, is it's not just enough to get rid of fares. People are not going to ride a free bus if it doesn't go where they want to go when they want to get there. I mean, there are people like me who might just ride the bus for fun, but most people will not just get on a bus for fun and ride it around. And so when we did Fare Free and Dash, I can tell you, we also redid our entire route structure at the same time, added more frequent service to the route structure at the same time. And I think made the system more relevant at the same time we were getting rid of fares. And then to answer Chair Randall's question, we were beneficiaries, as I know a number of other jurisdictions have been, as Ms. Hines noted, we were beneficiaries of trip funds from the state. The state was really good to help support these programs and get them off the ground. So that was a big.
So do you just build into your budget? I mean, after you expend all the trip funds or any other funds that you may have, you just build this into your budget from here right now?
Yeah, I mean, the advantage of trip is it steps down over a couple of years. So you're starting with a heavy subsidy from the state, and you're able to step it down over a couple of years. It's certainly an expense. I think it is, for those who look at how we subsidize heavy rail transit and look at how we subsidize bus transit, I mean, the subsidy level is dramatically lower on the bus side. Mayor Meyer's right. And so the money that you're losing is not significant. I get this question a lot, like, how are we paying for this? How are we paying for this? I'm like, all transportation is subsidized. The question is how subsidized it is and where the subsidy comes from, right? And we just changed that model. That's essentially.
And he's absolutely correct on the route adjustments. We studied where the pressure points were, and we made adjustments in terms of where the stops are located, the times, the intervals between them, to try and maximize the effectiveness of the actual routes themselves. We'll also say that we got some feedback, particularly from younger real estate agents, saying, when we put a house on the market, we can say this house is 4 houses from a free bus system. You can't really quantify that, monetize it in any way, but it is I think a significant footnote in terms of economic development, residential values.
Thank you.
Yeah, so with due respect to all that has been achieved by the two mayors and colleagues who spoke, I just perhaps want to be the skunk at the garden party a little bit on this. Ms. Hines mentioned the Northern Region Transportation Commission's work in this area, or at least on transit tracking. And Mary, I'm so glad that you asked whether they were tracking that, because December 17th, MBTC is going to be unveiling its Nova Transit Tracker, which is going to have real-time dashboard information on all of our bus systems. So agreed, that is I think a really important tool for all of us to use, inclusive of Loudon, OmniRide, and others. But I also just wanted to pipe up to commend everyone's attention a study, and I can circulate with colleagues if you're interested. 2 years ago at NBTC, we did a study, or the commission actually tasked staff with a study of what the options might look like to go zero or low fare. And I think we found a few things that are pretty sobering. I think it's important to know, for example, most of the communities around the country that have tried this tend to have fare box recovery around 7 to 10%. I know, Mayor Meyer, you mentioned yours. Our regional average, excluding Metro bus, is 23%. If you look at commuter bus, right, which is, I know when we think OmniRide and a lot of on connector, it's 65%. So fare box recovery matters for some of our systems. It's not a non-issue. The other point that really made an impression on me, particularly knowing that the federal government has completely abdicated any responsibility to fund the operating costs of transit. They generously expanded their capital contributions, but do absolutely nothing to fund operations. The way the federal government pays into our operating system is through smart benefits. Northern Virginia bus systems wide, 60% of our fares are paid by smart benefits, i.e. the federal government. So that is $1.4 million a month, at least in pre-pandemic times, we would be leaving on the table if we eliminated fares. So I bring all of that up, not to say that, free fares, I agree with Jeff in terms of free fares for students. That's been a priority for us too. I think makes a lot of sense, particularly when their alternative is something that costs us more, i.e. school buses. But I do want to just raise those cautions. I think what might make sense for one system or another is not going to make sense for everyone, and realistically across the region. I think it's just important to take it all with a grain of salt.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Just, I don't sit on our OmniRide or PRTC board regularly, but I did look up what we do. And we actually, back in February, instituted pre-fares on local and Metro Express bus services, okay? We did that, made those free, but we kept our commuters on Omni Express buses, fixed the commuters were still able to use the smart card. And so we bifurcated our system and are giving free fares and some. So I'm just saying,
Yeah.
kudos to TRTC. But
And what we found with the fare box, I'm sorry, we're going to be, but like that actually I think was really wise, because it looked like at least in 2019, the fare box recovery for local bus was 5%. It was 60% on commuter bus.
and from an equity standpoint, it really, really, really works.
Madam Chair, I'm so glad I started this conversation. Maybe I'll just end it by saying that I think this is a really good thing for us to be discussing. I know NVTC is doing a lot of work in this space. I would say that, one of the other drawbacks, besides the ones that were just mentioned, which are significant, it is also once you flip that switch, you have no idea really what the demand is going to be. And so one of the major concerns we have with a system of our size too, is you still want to be providing high quality service. You don't want to have to be, leaving people. I know what it feels like to have a bus pass you because there's no room to board, to just breeze right past the stop. And so, then people ended up getting stranded. And so, there's just some things to consider. But what I wanted to say is the reduced fare program that we are going to be implementing is a needs-based program. So kids will continue to ride free, but it is income-based and will reduce the fare from $2 to $1. And so we're going to have a pretty good idea after doing that, the complications with doing that for those who kind of want a hybrid to reduce fares for people who probably need that reduction the most without eliminating it altogether. We're going to have some data on what a hybrid might look like from that standpoint. So, this may enrich the conversation for people who are trying to debate the two. And then obviously the loss of federal funds, Smart Trip Benefits funds is a significant one, I think, for all of our jurisdictions that have heavy concentrations of federal workers. But we will have some data on a hybrid to be sharing, hopefully, once we get that up and running and maybe have a couple months under our belt.
So I think we have to move on, but Mr. McKay, Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Meyer, we have you to the end of the year. I will be calling all of you because we're just starting to have these discussions in Loudoun, and there are a lot of questions I would like to have and to know. And so I'm going to make some phone calls between now and when we have this discussion on the dais again. I'm sorry, Mr. Meyer, because I'm going to be here.
You might have even more time. You might even have more time to talk to you in the future.
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
You're not the first person to suggest a special project.
Yes, sir.
Just because TRIP is getting so much cheddar right now, our FY24 grant application cycle is open, and so we will be accepting FY24 TRIP grant applications February 1st.
Okay. Okay. All right. We're going to go on. I think we've pretty well covered item 8 already. I think we'll need to go back to that. So we'll go to the Finance Committee reports. Mayor Risha, would you like to? Mayor Risha, would you like to start this conversation?
The Finance Committee met on November 10th to focus of the meeting was preparation of the FY 24 operating regional revenue and local distribution budgets. The committee received information for new initiatives proposed for FY 24, which include regional bus rapid transit preliminary deployment plan, Nova Gateway dashboard enhancements, website modernization and consolidation, contracted legal services, investment consultant, offsite storage. Committee budget discussions will continue at upcoming meetings. The committee also received and discussed monthly reports on investment portfolio revenues and operating budget. And I would ask Mr. Rocky if he has anything to add.
I think that's very good recap.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Wilson, I'd like to do for your planning and program committee report. You look surprised. I guess you kind of did, actually. Yeah, no, I think you actually did kind of pretty well cover. You have anything else you want to add to that?
Receive my report.
Okay, no. That's not even necessary. That's not even necessary.
Moving on.
The planning coordination advisory committee report is in your package, as is the TAC report. Mr. Snyder, from your location far away, do you have anything you'd like to add for the technology committee report?
No, just that there was a very good meeting. I think you should have a written report in your package. If it's not there, we should get that to you. And this continues to be an area of strong focus, and thanks very much for including it in the larger long-range plan that was just approved. While I have the floor, just one other minute. The budget issue that Mayor Rischel mentioned regarding the BRT study, I think it'll be very important that we coordinate that with NVTC. So thanks very much. If anyone has any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone have any questions?
If I may just echo those comments, and BTC just, I believe, with the RP on the street, they've scoped out that BRT study, and I know it's eager for partnership with MBTA.
Right.
Wonderful. Ms. Beckman, do you have an executive committee report tonight?
Madam Chair, the only thing I would ask, and I'm going to ask him to stand up, we have hired a new planner, Griffin Frank, in the back. His first day was actually yesterday. We're glad he is on board, and you will be seeing a lot of Griffin, and we're just really excited that he's here. We're excited the transaction is adopted. We're just excited.
I had to ask, is he legally able to work? 15 years old.
He does have that youth disorder.
Poor guy.
I said, we're 15 years old. If you mistake me for being 25, I will not sue you. I will not sue you for that. Thank you. So I have a couple of things for the chair's comments. So the nominating committee, which is Mr. Wilson, Ms. Crystal, and Mr. McKay.
No, Chair Wheeler.
Oh, Chair Wheeler, okay.
Chair Wheeler.
Chair Wheeler, I'm sorry, I have that right. Chair Wheeler. So I'm assuming you all have yet to meet.
We've met many times. We've already had 5 or 6.
Sounds about right.
You can report out if you want to right now, man.
We're not ready.
So I am confident that by the time we get to the January organizational meeting, you will have a slate to put forward. A slate to put forward. I believe in you.
Maybe you'll place.
Mr. Committee.
As long as we know that's coming up. And
Is Jeff on the team?
Nope.
Jeff is not.
Can we add him?
The king of committees has it.
Did we need to add Jeff? Fairfax should be right? We wouldn't want to leave Fairfax out.
So we will have your nominations report at the January meeting. My other comments today is, of course, that this is Mayor Meyer's last meeting. And am I correct? Were you here when the Deep Magic was created? Were you here when House Bill 2313 was passed?
No.
You were not, that was Mr. Snyder who was here. How long have you been?
14, 15.
Okay.
Can't remember. Well, I know I was here in 15.
Well, I'm going to hand you the floor, sir.
Well, thank you. I want to express my appreciation to everyone who's calling in from all over the place, including Europe, as well as my colleagues around the table. Transportation is an absolutely critical component of everything we do. It's tied into our economic development, it's tied into everybody's personal lives. People elect us to come here and make decisions about a lot of things: housing, transportation, environment. But transportation is something that every person does every day. And we need to be able to make our community fair and equitable to every person. So that not just those who have the economic resources can choose when they want to go, but we want that choice and want that accessibility to every person. And it's expensive and it's hard. We have to go back to the taxpayers to explain. Some of them will not agree with us, but we have to make that case. And sometimes it's I don't want to get too maudlin about it, but it's a moral issue. And sometimes we have to put that marker in the ground, and it knows it's not a party issue. It's not an issue for the jurisdictions that are close in versus those that are farther out. It's really an issue for all of us, and it ties into our air quality. It ties into our property values. It's access to jobs. It's all of that. And I think that we all know that the legislation that created this created a new source of revenue, and that in and of itself was somewhat controversial. But as we look back on it, it's given us the tools to be able to make the first steps in investing in our region to make it the kind of region it needs to be for the 21st century and beyond. I grew up here. I remember watching, as Jeff did, I remember watching large swaths of land being cut down for highways with no thought about sidewalks, and no thought about alternative forms of transportation or the impact on the environment, or actually where those roads went. And oftentimes they went through neighborhoods that were people of color and people who didn't have a voice in the community. Literally, in fact, I'm old enough to remember I went through some neighborhoods where people didn't have the right to vote. So we've come a long way in the arc of our history, but we've got a lot more to do. And that's why this transaction is so important, because it's unrestrained, because it says this is what we really should do. We want to walk with the angels. Don't look at the dollar amount right now. Let's just look at what we need to do and hopefully make some wise choices. It's been a real pleasure for me personally to work with all of you. I consider you not just colleagues, but friends. And I encourage you to continue that dialogue we had this evening. And it's always, these moments are always rich. They're always respectful. And everybody brings different gifts and talents to the table. And thank you for being good colleagues and helping me learn a lot more than I knew before. And I will still be around if there's something I can do to assist any of you in any way. But thank you again, Chair Randall, and thank you, colleagues, for a great experience.
Mr. Meyer, I actually have for you, and we can take pictures shortly after the meeting. It says, because I can't stand up right now, so shortly after the meeting, in appreciation of your dedicated service on the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority and commitment to delivering regional multimodal transportation solutions, presented to David Meyer on December of 2022. Backman and who else wants to join us out front, we'll find the NVTA logo and take some pictures.
Thank you so much for the record.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. For me and some of us who haven't been here, that long, your wisdom, your kindness, It really helped us along when we first got here. It really, it was very appreciated, so thank you.
Madam Chair, it looks like Supervisor Harity might have his hand up.
Mr. Harry, is your hand up?
Nope, okay. Well, sorry about that.
Okay.
Oh, he's laughing.
Not very high.
Anybody else have anything else? I would simply say that we're, as we get ready to walk into the holiday season, I would say Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and Happy Kwanzaa and what am I missing?
Whatever party you want to
Happy
go.
Happy Festivus for the rest of us. You know? I agree with anything. Yeah, thank you. Anything we have a great holiday season, everybody. We are adjourned.
Yeah.